Oh, and there it goes. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Come on in, come on in, come on in. My name is Saya. My pronouns are whatever you're feeling in the moment, so you can't be wrong. I'm the manager of Rainbow Alley at the Center on Colfax, and this is another part of our Summer Academy speaker series. Normally, we're going around to different businesses, different organizations, bringing in different LGBTQ plus leaders in the community, so we can learn more about jobs or how to just cope with life in general. So today we're bringing to you something super special. I'm super excited to introduce Heidi and Cameron, who are representing. Ooh, do not get me. We're representing Jacob's Prism, and they are both professional engineers into the entering into the field, have worked in the field, and are going to give us a lot of information today around STEM, right? Science, engineering, technology, and mathematics. Now, those topics cannot. Excuse me, I am jumbling over my words today, but those topics can seem pretty dry, can seem pretty for some people or a lot of us untangible or not knowing exactly how to pursue something in that field. But, these are things that really impact our daily lives. And so super excited for them to share their own passions around STEM and what got them into the field, how to really navigate that field, especially with the identities they hold, and what that experience is like. So please stay tuned, ask questions in the comments section, and I'm going to add Heidi's presentation to the screen because they have some stuff for introductions and things like that. So just getting them all nice and set up. Also, because we have multiple presenters today, we're gonna have some pauses in the presentation as I'm switching from certain speaker to certain speaker, just to keep everything organized and that everyone can see and understand what's going on and it's not just kind of random. And lastly, I just want to once again give a shout out to Kendra, our awesome ASL interpreter, who has helped us out. This entire series. So just shout out to Kendra, always beautiful human being. Really appreciate all the work that she does for us. And also, this is our last week of Summer Academy in our Summer Academy speaker series. So please make sure that you tune in on Thursday as well for our last speaker. And you're totally good to go on to the next slide, Heidi. And just an overview of what exactly we'll be going over in this next hour and a half or so. As I said before, we're going to do kind of an introduction of who's on our panel today, Heidi and Cameron. Awesome folks. Can't wait for y'all to feel that energy. We're going to do an intro into kind of their workspace of Jacobs, talking about the STEM fields overall and what you should be looking for, what education background you might want to be thinking about if you're really serious about pursuing a degree in STEM. Those internships, I'm telling y'all, volunteering and internships, y'all need that, right? Y'all be talking about, well, I don't have the experience. Internships, volunteering, that's where you're getting that experience from. So make sure you, stay tuned to hear about how do you get an internship that's going to be right for you. Interviewing and resume tips, because listen, you did all of that work. You need to actually advertise yourself in a way to get the job. So we're going to talk about that. Finding the right company for you. We talked about this a little bit a couple of weeks ago in our gender expansive workshop on trying to find a job that where you can still express your gender expression and identity in a way that's right for you. So how do you find the right company for you? Things like that we'll be talking about. And how do you maintain your values? How do you not lose yourself in this kind of job market workplace? Because it's surprisingly easy to make happen. So I hope I did a good job of kind of going over that agenda of what, yeah? Okay, awesome. Yeah. And with that, I'm gonna pass it right on to Cameron to take a minute to introduce yourself.
Yeah. So my name's Cameron. So my pronouns are he and him. I'm from Parker, Colorado, so just south of Denver. I'm a civil engineer with Jacobs, so I focus primarily on transportation design, which is like bridges, highways, stuff like that. I really like to go camping. I like to garden. The picture on the right is my boyfriend and I this past weekend. We went to Rocky Mountain National Park. We had a really nice time. So that's me. I'll hand it off to Heidi.
All right, thank you, Cameron. I'm Heidi Bauer. I started at Bear Creek High School and ended up graduating from Mullen High School, and then went to CU Boulder, and then ended up transferring to the Colorado School of Mines. Got my engineering degree with environmental emphasis. And just a quick note on, because it didn't fit elsewhere in the presentation, how I decided to choose engineering. I actually was a softball player and got recruited to play at different schools, and none of them seemed like the right academic fit, so I chose CU Boulder. It's where I wanted to be, but I missed it terribly. And I was in a science degree. I knew I liked science, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. So it actually was the perfect fit. They offered me a scholarship for softball, and I went to the school bookstore and I just spent the afternoon looking through different textbooks to decide which engineering field, because I realized engineering is applying science. So how cool is that? That's what I want to be doing. So that's how I ended up becoming an engineer. So after graduating, I worked actually as a water and wastewater treatment operator. That's what this other photo, it's quite old, is showing. And that's what the CWP means in my name. And we'll talk about that later. And so then after 2 years of doing that, I started working for CH2M Hill, which became Jacobs. I've been there for 12 years. So it took me a while to find the right fit for a school, but not for a company. And we are excited to be here. As Saya mentioned, both of us work for a company called Jacobs Engineering Group. And we have quite a few, Jacobs is a global consulting firm, about 52,000 employees worldwide. So this is a good real world example of a STEM company. These are some of our lines of business: buildings, transportation, which is what Cameron is in, advanced facilities, aviation, and I'm in water.
So before we move on too quickly, I think I'm gonna remove Cameron from the screen so we can focus on you, Heidi. And so Cameron is gonna join us back in just a second, y'all. Don't miss him too much. All right, you're good to go, Heidi.
Cool, thanks. So here's some of our other lines of business regarding energy and environmental and even aerospace. So not every engineering firm has all of these different branches, but this is what we have. And
yeah, it's like a wide range of different things you can be interested in.
Yeah, it's kind of neat to see some of these lines of business, like, oh, I didn't even know we did that. That's how big we are. But to give you an idea of what we do in general for all those lines of business, we really tackle the entire life cycle. I think I can do a laser pointer here. So going through the cycle, starting at the beginning with doing different studies to gauge the problem and determine and investigate different solutions, and then going through the planning, designing. Procurement means like purchasing of equipment, and then there's construction, startup, and then even you think, oh, well, that's the end. Well, not necessarily. There's operations and maintenance we can do. So sometimes we have projects where we do the entire realm of, we get paid to, from beginning to end, we design, construct, and then operate and maintain it for 20 years. That's the contract. And so there's some opportunities there. And then to complete the circle, optimization, and back to the beginning of making things better and optimal. And so that's kind of the world of what we do.
Could you maybe kind of walk us through what this cycle looks like in a small example?
Sure. So for a wastewater plant, for example, the owner or the utility, so maybe like Denver Metro is the biggest entity. So they might say, we need to expand our plant. Denver's growing so big, so fast that we need to expand it. So we would study and see, well, how big do we need to make it? Do we need to double it? Do we need to just add 20%? So we would study that, and then we design that and construct it, and then we don't just walk away when the concrete is poured, and that we make sure that it's functional once you put the flows through it. And then that's not a good example because they would continue to operate it as owners. But some other example, maybe they would say, okay, well, we just pay you per month, and you guys operate and maintain it. And what's neat is that actually gives us opportunities to optimize with more risk than maybe a typical owner would. That we might say, okay, we want to try this new technology. And normally we'd recommend to our client, well, there hasn't been many of those in the past, so maybe don't try it, but maybe we'd say, well, let's try it, and because we would save our own money at that point. And then
I know that's right. Bottom line.
So, oops, I'm going backwards. Okay, so STEM careers in general. So again, Jacobs is just one example and is a lot of engineering, but not only engineering, but we want to talk about STEM careers in general. So here I'm not going to read this slide, you can read it, but these are reasons to consider a STEM career. So basically, if you like to solve problems, if you like to ask questions, if you like to make a difference in the world, if you want to love what you do when you work, I think STEM is a great opportunity to try to do that. And this slide does line out some, there are some exciting opportunities to travel and work abroad and all of that, but I also want to share that that's not always necessary. If there's plenty of problems at home to work on and solve here locally. So just wanted this slide to describe all the things we do, the buildings that you live in, just look around your room right now, and you can there's nothing that you can look at that hasn't been touched by a STEM professional, either engineered or otherwise worked on. So we touch the world around you every day. I once was told, if you want to touch and improve people's lives, you can do that as a doctor, but if you want to order of magnitude increase the number of lives that you affect and keep safe, become an engineer, because you can only interact with one patient at a time, but as an engineer and you're working on protection structures for floods, making drinking water safe to drink, those kind of things, you're going to be touching 10 to 100-fold the number of people.
That's beautiful. I never really thought about it like that.
Yeah. And then the environment. I mean, climate change is happening. It's my prediction, it's going to get worse, and we need solutions. So engineering and STEM is a great way to work on that. And then I wanted to give you a case in point here to describe what I do specifically. So within wastewater, I specialize in biosolids. And so, wastewater already is, I think, the funnest engineering, because, how can you not have fun when when you talk about poo all day? But anyway, we definitely have a sense of humor about what we do. So what I do within the wastewater treatment system, we clean it up so that it can be discharged to a lake or a river. And so you extract everything that's not clean water, and you treat that with natural bacteria and other treatment techniques, and you end up with what's shown here that are called biosolids. It looks like soil, it feels like soil, because it's very similar to soil, and it has a lot of values that can grow plants in it. It has a lot of nutrients. So it's a great way to replenish the environmental cycle. For example, phosphorus is a limited element on this earth. There's actually quite a limited number of places that have to mine phosphorus in order to put them in detergents and fertilizers, chemical fertilizers. But with biosolids, we can take that same, from those same soaps and detergents that end up in your wastewater, we're extracting them out through these biosolids, and then we give them to the farmers, and then they can use that to plant crops. And so we're completing that nutrient cycle for that phosphorus, as opposed to phosphorus and it never ending. So just wanted to give you that.
And I love how you're kind of like also talking about these things that we don't really think about or that we take for granted are things that really, like a lot of people are working really, really diligently and hard and dealing with, things that we don't, like I said, we don't really think about just to keep us safe or just to make the world work a little bit better.
Yeah, when I tell them I'm a wastewater engineer, they look at me and they say, well, someone's got to do it. That's absolutely right. There's a lot of behind the scenes that's going on with engineering, and it's kind of quite exciting to be a part of that. When we're not in the news, that's a good thing, Okay, so I wanted to talk about, education. What do you need to do to become an engineer? So, and other STEM. So first, I really want to make this message clear. I hope this comes through loud and clear. If you don't take anything else from this whole presentation, I want you to know that you do not have to be a white, male, straight, from money, from parents that have STEM careers themselves person to be a STEM professional. All you need to do is have the motivation and hard work and be willing to learn. So I want to make that clear off the bat. So what do you need to study? First, to get, and I'll speak to engineering because Cameron and I know that best. To be an engineer, you need to go to an ABET accredited school. ABET stands for Accreditation Board of Engineering and Technology Accreditation, sorry. And there are many great schools in Colorado that have a great reputation in engineering and are ABET certified. So Colorado School of Mines, my alma mater, CU Boulder, Cameron's alma mater, and actually all three of the CU schools. CSU has a great engineering program, and also if you want to go a little bit further but not too far, University of Wyoming actually also has a good engineering school. Wow. Wanted to make note of that. And then
can I ask you a quick question about that? When it comes to accreditation, what happens if you end up going to a school that doesn't have that accreditation?
Then you cannot end up getting your PE professional engineer license. Unless, I don't know, there might be some caveat that you work in the field for like 10 years or something, and then you can, so you, and I'm serious, I'm not making that up.
No, I know. That's why I'm like, wow, that's real.
So you have to get your bachelor's degree. You can get a master's or a PhD, but you don't have to. So after you get your bachelor's degree, you would take an exam called the Fundamentals of Engineering, and that's an 8-hour exam. And after you get that, you have you can, after you pass, you can get the EIT after your name, like Cameron has for engineer in training. It's a closed book test that has a wide range of topics, engineering related topics. And then about 4 or 5 years later, working as an engineer under someone that has a PE license, then you would take the professional engineering license exam. That's another 8-hour exam, but this one is open book and it's more specific to your discipline. So I guess I should say most of them are 8 hours, but if you want to become a structural engineer, you have to take a 16-hour course.
Ooh. Oh my goodness.
Yes, more intensive because it's a lot of protection of life there. If they don't know what they're doing, things can fail and people don't survive.
Yeah, so and especially since we were just talking about like those tiny things that we don't, as normal lay people, we're not thinking about those. And like you said before, they're impacting so many lives. So I guess it does make sense. Like you got to have these intense like trainings and making sure that people know what's going on. Because if you mess up the water supply, that's it. So.
Right. Yeah, and that's a good point. That reminds me, then once you achieve your license and you have a stamp and you can stamp things as an engineer, you have to renew that license. You still have to keep up with your knowledge base and so keep on top of that. Okay, so some more points on this slide I'd like to make is number one, you do not have to be the very top of your class in math or science to be a STEM professional. You and a couple of things with that. So first, as I said, you really just need to be willing to learn. Engineering is not just for the top whatever percentile or whatever. It's really for people that are interested and excited to learn. And then two, it's not just math and science that you have to be good at. All of these courses here, social studies, humanities, computers, English speech, you need to be well diverse in those skills as well. I mean, I spend more time writing and presenting at conferences and to clients than I actually do running hard numbers in a computer. And so I also wanted to give everyone a secret about the School of Mines as well, because I just don't want people to be intimidated, especially this audience that you have to, they have this reputation that it's so tough and all of that. I transferred into Colorado School of Mines, and so I didn't. Their first classes, they make way harder than they need to be. They call them their filter classes to weed out the people that aren't serious or whatever. But then they leave all their people and their classes are empty. So they want people to come back. So you can transfer in. And in fact, like Red Rocks Community College has a program specifically with the Colorado School of Mines intended to transfer students in. So if you feel like you're just not quite ready to jump all the way into Colorado School of Mines as a freshman, but you're interested and have the desire to learn, I encourage you to consider a community college and take some extra time and steps, and maybe even save some money by doing that as well. So I wanted to. And then last on this slide, I wanted to tell you that, I hope everyone on this call, I assume everyone on this call is somewhat interested in STEM. And I wanted to say that if your knack is you're just really good at English and communications, you just don't get it when it comes to math, but you are interested in just being around this kind of environment with technology and changing the world and all of that, there's also a place for you. So within our company, for example, we have people that all they do is work on proposal. They're graphic artists. We have computer-aided technicians that come from graphic artists schools that create the three-dimensional computer-aided design models. We have technical writers that help us, create and finalize our writing. So kind of like you're doing, Saya, you're like interpreting what we're saying. They would review what we say and say, this doesn't make sense to me, and help us in that so we can better communicate with our clients. And then last thing on this slide that I wanted to come back to from before was the wastewater and wastewater treatment operations that I did. That's another great example that could have been an entire career in itself for me, that involves some science and math, and you take labs and you make decisions to it's a different kind of problem solving, and that's another great field if you feel like you're somewhat interested but you just really like hands-on and mechanical things. That's another kind of aspect of the STEM profession to consider something like that.
I really appreciate you kind of going into all of the different ways you can be involved in STEM, especially with engineering, because just having had like a lot of different engineering friends, I'm always so intrigued into the depthness of like what they get into in their research, whether that's city planning or even looking how neighborhoods and things have the resources that they need and things like that. So I was going to ask, actually, that's what I was going to do. I was going to ask you, in general, when someone, especially those who maybe aren't as skilled in math and science, what kind of personality or what kind of interests do you think would be a good fit for someone to like serve in this role?
Well, again, to answer that question, I would say first, when you say not good, does that mean you don't enjoy it, or does that mean you just aren't the top of the class? So if you enjoy it and you're interested in it and you are like to learn it, then pursue it. But if you just like, ooh, I just don't like it, not that you just don't get it and just need a little extra help, but you just like, I don't enjoy it and never will, then yes, I would encourage you to find we have marketers, people that do marketing, so you can still be involved in a STEM company and have a different role, if that answers your question.
Awesome.
All right. And so I wanted to give just a couple ideas on how to pay for your STEM education, because that's always a question in everyone's mind and a challenge more and more as the costs of school and your education increases every year. So some schools offer co-ops where you kind of work and learn at the same time, kind of hands-on kind of programs. I'm not aware of any in Colorado, but I know they exist. And second is obviously scholarships and grants and student loans. Two example scholarships I wanted to mention that are STEM related is the National Organization of Gay and Lesbian Scientists and Technical Professionals.
What?
If you didn't know an organization like that exists, it does, and they offer scholarships. And then the Alexander Foundation is one that's specifically in Colorado that offers some scholarships to individuals that are serving the GLBT community. So those are great to consider. And then last is regarding part-time employment or summer internships. And I will give it to Cameron to discuss that and more.
Awesome. Cool, y'all. So I'm about to change up the screen. Thank you so much, Heidi. We're going to see you later. Appreciate you so much. And I'm also going to remove her screen. Welcome back, Cameron. All right. Cameron's going to finish off internships for us. And I think I may have muted you, so I'm going to unmute you. Cool.
Can you hear me?
You're good. Yes. Sorry.
Great. So giving a little bit more about internships. So for those of you that don't know, so internships are just like really brief job opportunities. They're like 3 to 6 months with companies. And it's kind of like a trial run. So you get to try and see, okay, what is it like to work with this company? What is it like to, work in that kind of field or that type of job? So they're really good experience. A lot of bigger companies have, internships like all year long, different types of internships. Um, they also happen at smaller companies, but it's not as rare just because a lot of smaller companies sometimes don't have like the budget. Um, Most internships, in order to get them, you first have to apply, and there's kind of like an interview process. And in just a little bit, I'll go over like some interview tips to try and help you get those internships. And then just to share like a little bit of personal experience. So when I was in college at CU Boulder, I actually was lucky enough that I got 2 internships that were like really awesome. So the first one was with like a biomedical engineering company, which is very different from civil engineering. Bridges and heart stuff and pacemakers are like completely separate. What I was lucky enough to do is like I got to work on like a new probe that they put like down your nose and down your throat, and it takes pictures of your stomach to see if you have like cancer or stuff like that. So that was like really cool. Yeah, and like even though I was civil engineering, I was still able to go and like do something like that and try that out, and that was a really fun experience. And then the other experience that I had is I worked for a mechanical engineering company. So I, at the time, was going to school and lived in Colorado. Well, they flew me out to live in LA. And so I lived in LA for 3 months, and they paid for my housing. Plus they paid me, salary too for working there. And I got to help design like some of the air conditioning systems at Disney World at their new theme park. So
whoa.
Yeah, there's
I'm in the wrong field.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool experiences that you can get. You just have to kind of know what's out there and know how to kind of pursue them. So
can I ask you a quick question around internships? I know, so coming from a counseling background, a counseling internship, you're almost guaranteed you're not going to make any money at an internship if you're like learning to do counseling, just not in the budget. But and I know like this is something that, when I was looking for internships in undergrad, my mom was very pressed about gotta find an internship that pays, gotta find an internship that pays. So when it comes to like the internships that you would come across, do you find that they're mostly paid or mostly unpaid?
So in my experience, they were both paid. And I think that across like STEM internships, that's pretty much guaranteed, or that's very common, because these are larger and kind of professional companies, established companies. I haven't heard of anyone that I know that has had a STEM internship that's not paid, but that's not to say that an unpaid internship isn't valuable experience or it's lesser in any way. Not at all. Like the real value from these internships is like the experience and meeting people and learning stuff. Like that's 100% kind of what you should get out of it. So
awesome. And before we move on too quickly, so sorry, Heidi, that I didn't put up your information. I'll put your information back up when you come back on. But that's not what I want, y'all. But I just wanted to share with y'all. Both Heidi and Cameron have shared their LinkedIn pages with us. So if going through this, whether you're watching this live or you're watching it after the fact, if you're like, oh, I'm really interested in what Cameron's doing, I'm trying to put things down people's noses to see if they have cancer, or you're interested in the work that Heidi's doing, please feel free to reach out to them, look up the work that they're doing on their LinkedIn, and yeah, just stay connected, y'all. Always stay connected, especially if you're trying to get into engineering. Gotta keep your network. But cool. So I just wanted to make that point, and we can continue.
Yep, that's great. So this slide is just kind of expectations of, if you do get a STEM internship, kind of what is it like and what you should look for. in all of my internship experiences, I was always part of a team working on real world stuff. And there was some things that I learned from school that I was able to apply. You get to practice a lot of stuff like communication, teamwork, as well as kind of the one thing that you just kind of mentioned offhand was, building a network and keeping in touch with people. That's really important, and that's something that's really valuable that comes from STEM internships as well. So, so next I'll be going into and this is just kind of a brief mention, is Jacobs has a lot of really great summer internships. And there's ones kind of all across the country because Jacobs is a very large company, and lots of different fields and stuff like that. So if you ever were interested and wanted to try and do, a STEM internship, Jacobs is a good place to look.
And how old do you have to be? So for those internships, is those mainly for college student level, or is there opportunities for younger folks as well?
As far as I know, it's usually people that have finished their first year of college, so they've already gone through, and it's usually meant for the summer after your freshman year or on. I don't know if there are any specific opportunities for people younger than college age. That would be something I'd have to check on, but I know for sure. So next I'll go into some interview and resume tips. So, let's say you do find that awesome internship or job, how do you get that? How do you pursue that? So, the majority of the things I'm going to talk about are kind of focused towards getting a STEM job or internship. But there are a lot of things that are kind of, applicable to other different professions or other jobs. So if there's anything that is applicable across the board, I put a little rainbow flag next to it. So look out for those. So it's kind of applicable to everyone. So usually there's only 3 documents that are associated with any sort of interview. So there's a cover letter, a resume, and then references. So a cover letter is just kind of a brief 1-page letter where you're describing yourself and your professional experience and why you think you'd be a good fit for the job. And it's always provided with a resume. It's not like a standalone. So cover letters are more of kind of trying to tell a story about yourself and why you think you're a good fit. It's more of kind of a narrative. Whereas a resume is really just kind of a summary sheet and a fact sheet with, numbers and bullet points. And it really should have all of your information and all of your experience. I found that not a lot of places have actually asked for a cover letter. I've only had one place really ask. It's really more references and resumes. Those are the 2 things that you really need to have. And so references it's just a short list. Usually it's 3 to 5 people. And it's people that your employer, your interview can call, and they can check and say, okay, is Cameron really who he said he is, or is he some crazy serial killer that's lying to us,
Oh. Yeah. Oh, and references, y'all. That's where that networking comes in. That's where that teacher that you didn't like 3 years ago comes in. How did you treat them? Did you burn that bridge? So that's where that networking comes in handy, because you want to be able to reach out to people who are in that field or just are able to speak highly of you. So be careful of the bridges you decide to burn.
That's a really good point. And references can be, professional references, but you can also have personal references too. When I was getting my first job, I didn't have all these coworkers or people that could vouch for me. So I put a family friend down who kind of knew who I was and knew that I was a good person. So that's also something that you can include too. But So this slide is just kind of an example resume just for people that haven't seen one before. So usually kind of how it works is you have, like your name in like really big letters at the top. You list things like, your education, your work experience, volunteer experience, skills. So that's a good example. So one point that I want to make is that it can be really daunting to try and like create a resume. Like when I go back and I show you this, like you look at that and you're like, oh, like, you know, formatting that in Microsoft Word is like going to be impossible, and that looks just like a
Mhm.
pain. Well, there's actually websites online where for like, $3 or something like that, you can create a resume. Like you can literally just like type it in and it'll, spit it into a template that looks really good and really professional. And they're really easy, and once again they're like $3 or $5. So, and that's what I did in college when I was creating my first resume. So I'd really recommend that and look into that. So kind of some important information to put on your resume is like, your name, your email, um, cell phone number, how they're going to get a hold of you, education, like, where you went to school, what your grades were. If you're taking any classes that are, cool or maybe relate to the job, like putting those classes on there too is a really good idea. As well as like work experience and volunteer experience. Volunteer experience is like, in my mind, also just as valuable as work experience because it kind of shows that you're motivated and that you care enough about something to do it kind of on your own time.
Mhm.
As well as skills and programs that you know. So one other tip that I wanted to give is, as much as it is fun to like, use color and stuff like that, you can see like it's really hard to read that word and it's kind of a pain. And like if someone, is trying to like squint and read your resume and it's a pain, they're just gonna like throw it out. So always try and,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So always try and keep like your resume in black and white. Um, so another kind of tip, and not a lot of people know this, is so um, when when these companies have like all these people that are applying and they get lots and lots of resumes, they actually use like automated systems that will go through and it kind of like reads the resumes and it checks them. And usually what it'll do is it kind of takes the ones that it thinks are good and it'll pull them aside, and then that's when someone like a human will actually pick it up and read it. So in order to kind of get your resume into that pile and to get the best chance, when it says like specifically they're looking for like a skill, like let's say they want someone, they specifically say like Microsoft Excel, then if you have experience in Excel, like make sure that you list that on your
Mhm.
resume. Um, Another thing too is try and match like the words that they list. So if they say, it's required that you have proficiency in Microsoft Excel, then try and use like that same word. Say, I'm proficient in Excel. Those are really good at kind of, to someone reading it too, it sounds like you're like, the exact person that they're looking for too.
Mhm.
So another tip two is, so I say use power words. So it's just try and use words that have a little bit more punch or more meaning. So, if you say, wrote letters to congressmen, it doesn't sound as impactful or as impressive as saying, drafted correspondence. So
Mhm.
go,
Ooh, and I totally hear what you mean by don't go overboard because you can get to the point where you start just using words
yeah,
and you
exactly.
it's not even making sense. It's not even communicating what you're trying to communicate.
Exactly. So use a thesaurus, but like not every word. Maybe every other word. So so next would be interview tips. So just to give a little bit more information for some people that maybe might not have had an interview. So usually kind of how an interview goes is it's 30 to 60 minutes. I've almost always had it be at that company's office. You know, you drive there and you meet them there. Now in kind of like the age of COVID-19, a lot of people are doing online or video interviews. So, you know, maybe that might be something that happens in the future. But within those,
oh, sorry.
no, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, to that point, I know that some places are using, like they're doing actually pre-recorded interviews.
Really?
Yeah, like they'll ask the question and then like you record your answer and then they review it later. So I think that's like an effort with like COVID-19. But I just thought that was interesting of, yeah, especially with COVID-19, the way interviews are being formatted is starting to like look different too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting to hear. I haven't heard of that.
Right.
Yeah, very cool. So usually like within like interviews, it's like 30 to 60 minutes, which can kind of feel like a long time, and it's kind of stressful. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, you know, because you're sitting there and they're just kind of asking you questions about like your resume and your experience and who you are, as well as usually in an interview, they'll also kind of tell you more about the company and the job and more about what you'll be doing. So a good rule of thumb or good practice is you should always bring extra copies of your resume to the interview. Even if you've already like emailed them your resume or given them some before, you should always have extra copies. It just kind of shows that you're prepared. Another big tip is, so after you've already had your interview, it's really good practice to send an email to the person that you talk to. And all you have to say is, you know, like, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it. I'm really excited to hear more. That's it. But that's a really good point to remember. That's kind of like industry standard nowadays. But kind of the main point that I wanted to make about interviews is, like, interviews aren't really meant just for the company to get to know you. It's really like a time where you should be trying to learn more about the company. That's kind of where you find out if the job is a good fit for you. And I kind of go into that a little bit later on.
Awesome.
Yeah, so finding the right company. So in order to kind of find the right company, you have to kind of determine what's important to you. You know, what do you value? So the best way to do that is kind of ask yourself, you know, certain questions. So, like, what work feels satisfying to you? You know, do you enjoy solving problems? Do you enjoy like helping people? Do you enjoy like creating something that's very artistic and beautiful? Like, what kind of like fills you up inside? Another question is, you know, is it important to you to have like a tangible outcome? So, like, for me personally, like it is really important. You know, I like when I design a bridge, like I actually get to see it like built and it's a real thing and it's, you know, kind of a solid tangible thing. Whereas, you know, my boyfriend is a biomedical engineer and he works on, you know, designs for like pacemakers and stuff like that. And so he's having an actual impact, but like he never really gets to see that in person, and it's not as important to him. So that's something to kind of consider. Another kind of question to think about is, you know, is the ability to talk about your personal life at work important to you? So, and I kind of want to preface that by saying, you know, you should never ever have to deal with like disrespect or discrimination in the workplace. Like that's just baseline not okay, and you should never have to put up with that. But there are some people that just kind of they want to show up to work and they just kind of want to do their thing and not really tell anyone about kind of who they are, or they don't really care to share their personal life. They just kind of want to show up and do the work and go home. Me personally, like I like to share kind of like my personal life and tell kind of my coworkers like, oh, I went hiking with my boyfriend, So that's something to kind of consider.
Like being able to be yourself at work, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can always kind of be yourself at work. It not necessarily kind of prefacing or like the point I'm trying to get at is being out or not at work.
Mm-hmm.
But somewhere along those lines.
Like, you gotta definitely like keep the boundaries for sure.
Yeah.
And kind of deciding like what those boundaries are for you and how important is it that you can bring a certain amount of yourself into work so that you can feel like you can do your job. Does that make sense?
That is perfect. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Thank you. Another kind of question to kind of think about is like, do you enjoy, being like really busy and kind of, nose to the grindstone, or do you like to work at more of kind of like a relaxed pace and take time to kind of think things through and to not feel as kind of pressured? And people work at different paces, and it's not to say that one is better than the other, but kind of defining what feels more comfortable to you is definitely something that's important. Another kind of question is, do you care if your work or company makes a positive impact? So, I mean, like in an ideal world, like everyone would say, like, yes, of course, like I want to make a positive impact. I want to do good, but more of kind of like the point I'm trying to get towards is like there's people that are tax accountants and they enjoy being like tax accountants. They do people's taxes and that's a good thing, and they make a positive impact. But more of what I'm trying to get at is like, do you care about your job affects the lives of how many people, or you work at a company that is donating towards causes that are important to you, or has opportunities to volunteer and help out causes that you care about. If that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, because especially I think now people are becoming more aware, more cognizant, and more concerned about what are the true values. I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later too, but where are the true values of this company that I'm working for? Where do they stand on some of the issues that are very important to me? And even maybe your work isn't necessarily tied into those issues, right? We still, work in a capitalist society where money goes places and it kind of means things. So, is the company you're working for representative of those issues that you care a lot about?
Exactly. Gosh, I should just have you like translate everything I say, because you're way more eloquent than I do.
I just love words. I don't know.
Yeah. And then another question or thing to think about, and this kind of speaks to something that Heidi mentioned earlier, is like, do you enjoy kind of like working with your hands and being on your feet, or are you more comfortable with being in an office? And, one is not necessarily better than the other. Like, Heidi worked as a wastewater treatment operator, so she was a STEM professional, but she was working at a treatment plant. She was, up and about and using her hands and doing things all day long. Whereas kind of a lot of my jobs, I've just always kind of been at an office, at a computer, and that's just kind of what I feel more comfortable with. So, and not to say that, once again, like one is better than the other. So kind of the next thing that I was going to go over is kind of my experiences that I've had in finding my way to a company that really felt right. Actually, that's the next slide. Got sidetracked. So one thing to kind of do is once you've kind of asked yourself those questions and you've figured out like, okay, this is what feels good to me. This is kind of what I'm looking for. This would be a good fit. You should always kind of research that company before the interview and try and see, does this company follow those values? Do they like speak about this on their website or in kind of material that they put out to the world? Do they donate or volunteer to certain events? Like, for example, like our CEO at Jacobs, he marches at the Dallas Pride every single year. And they have like a big float and stuff like that. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's really gratifying to see. So another kind of thing to consider is if you do have like a good network, or if you know people that work at different companies or in the field that you want to work in, reach out to them, try and ask them questions, try and learn more, try and see kind of what that company culture is like, or kind of what that kind of job is like.
Mm-hmm.
I find that is usually kind of the best way, is because then people are a little bit more honest or give you better advice or more straightforward advice
Than if they're in a room with their supervisor and everyone on the team.
Exactly.
And they're like trying to tell you, no, run, don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, yeah. And then kind of like the big point that I really want to make about like interviews and finding the right company is like in an interview, like I would have a list of questions that you ask them that relate directly to your values. This was probably like the biggest thing that I learned to try and find a company that was good for me. So like I have a list of like 8 questions written down somewhere that, one of them's like, for example, do you have any programs that promote diversity and inclusivity, and do you have an example that kind of speaks to that? Because that's something that's really important to me, and it gets to the point of like, okay, well, if these people don't really care about that, then they're just gonna be like, well, we kind of do this, and like, well, maybe this company isn't the best. Maybe it's not a good fit.
Mm-hmm. And I would also say, be mindful too about their answers to those questions, and those can also be telling.
Exactly.
To your point, I had an experience where I was interviewing for an internship in grad school, and it was for a room full of school counselors, and I asked, "What are your goals for the year?" And someone's answer was, well, I want all students in this school to feel loved, supported, welcomed, X, Y, and Z. And I had an immediate follow-up because I'm like, okay, well, how are you measuring that? Because you can say that can mean anything, like if, being mindful of, not only asking those questions, but really listening to what they're saying, and does what they're saying make sense and really align with what you're seeking to do? Because sometimes it can sound really nice and fluffy, but really there's no substance behind it. So that's why I really liked how you said, what is the example to that D&I initiative?
Exactly. And that's like a really good point is, they can say all they want, but if you do your research and you check to see like, okay, are they actually, pursuing the things that I care about or the values that I have, or, can they provide examples? Like that's a really good way to kind of cut to like exactly of like, okay, what's the T, you know?
Oh, period. What is the tea?
Exactly. So kind of my last slide is I kind of want to share my experience like out of college and all the kind of the stuff that I went to, and hopefully it can shed a little bit of light on kind of like it's not easy to find the right job, you know. So my first job out of college, I graduated with a degree in civil engineering, and I was just so nervous about finding a job. I was so worried that I wasn't going to find one. So, I interviewed with this company, and I didn't really ask them any questions. I didn't really check to see, like what they were doing, or at that point I didn't even really define like what work do I care about, what kind of things do I value. I just got a job offer, and I was like, oh heck yeah, I got a job, so I took it. And what ended up happening was, they hired me as an engineer, but I was working like 60 hours a week, 50 hours a week. And I was mopping floors, and I was painting walls and picking up trash, and yeah, and I was just called like all sorts of names, and had all these terrible experiences where people were very homophobic and hurtful, and it was just an awful environment. It wasn't fun. So after 6 months of that, I finally decided, enough is enough. And so I, I interviewed with engineering jobs, and I kind of really thought about, what kind of work do I want to do? I don't want to be like painting walls and picking up trash. Like that's just kind of not what feels good to me. I want to do something that's engineering and problem solving. I kind of help define like what feels good work wise to me. So my second job, I was working for a land development firm. So what I was basically doing is, like, let's say someone wants to build an apartment building. So they would have an architect design the building, but the entire rest of the area around the building needed to be designed by like a civil engineer. And so that's what I was doing. And so I really enjoyed what I was doing. I was getting to solve problems, I was getting to do engineering, and it felt really good. It felt challenging, and I learned a lot, but I didn't really think about or define like, okay, like what do I value in a company? What makes a place that I feel comfortable, that I feel safe, and then even kind of in that work environment, I had, some discriminatory things said to me, and some workplace bias, and it ended up just being more than I felt comfortable or safe. And so I started to look for other jobs. And so I wanted to make sure that if I'm going to be switching jobs again, like I want to make sure that I'm getting the right job, because I just couldn't handle, having to go through all those terrible things again. So I really sat down and took the time to think, okay, like what matters to me? What do I care about? And so, kind of along comes Jacobs, and I was very pointed and asked my questions, and I took the time and I researched them, and so far I've been at Jacobs for almost a year now, and I find all the work that I do very meaningful and satisfying, and I'm able to bring my authentic self to work. Like I have a picture of me and my boyfriend at my desk, and and like I get to tell people about my life, or I feel that like I'm respected for what I bring to the table, and for who I am as kind of like a person. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's been like a long road, and it's been a long experience, and so I don't want to discourage people, but like sometimes a job just kind of sucks, and it's hard to find one that's perfect, but things definitely get better along the way. And as long as you kind of identify your values and what you care about, you'll definitely kind of find your way.
Absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
what's super important about your story too is, you did kind of, and I think we talked about this too in a previous session a little bit. You're kind of going more into it. But, even that first job experience, especially like, just getting out of college or just getting out of high school, because this really can apply to a lot of different situations, right? You get that first job and you're like, oh, okay, someone wants to give me money, someone wants to pay me. And then you can be taken advantage of because of that, especially if you're younger, especially if you don't have all the most experience and this is really your first real job experience. You don't necessarily know what your career really looks like. And so people take advantage of that. And, I think another important piece to note is, as much as we want to keep that professional boundary, as much as we want to say, well, I just leave everything at home and go into work. And then when I leave work, I leave everything at work and just go home. They bleed into each other. If you're not happy at work, it's definitely going to show up at home. And if you're not happy at home, it's going to show up at work. So those two things are really important. And so even if you do have to take that job that you don't really like and care for, and you realize, okay, this is just eating away at me, remember you can do like Cameron said, do that research, find other companies, other places, and start applying. So that way you can work towards having that job experience that does fuel you, not just take away from you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. And kind of a hard transition, but once you kind of like identified your values and what you care about, it's not kind of like over. You have to, once you start working, you have to kind of be able to maintain your values and what you care about.
Mm-hmm.
So Heidi's going to go into just a little bit more on that.
All right, we're going to do a little bit of voodoo magic here. I have to. Awesome. And here we are back with Heidi. I'm also going to switch the little ticker tape at the bottom so that way y'all get a glimpse of Heidi's contact information. Please look her up on LinkedIn, y'all. Learn more about the work that these amazing people are doing, because you never know. As I'm learning through just this presentation itself, engineering, STEM is such a broad field. There's so many different things. So get an idea of what are those different things you can be looking into by looking at their LinkedIn profiles and reaching out and asking questions. But with that, Heidi's going to talk to us about maintaining our values and not losing ourselves in work.
Thank you so much, both of you. And Saya, given the time, do you want me to, I have some long stories to share. Do you want me to go quickly through them or try to take up the rest of the time? How much time do we want to save for questions?
I would say out of your stories, whichever one you're most excited to share, keep that one at full length and then maybe kind of be brief with the others. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, I will do that.
Thank you for being mindful of time.
Yes. So being authentic at work, what does that mean? I don't know if anyone has heard that before. It seems to kind of be a growing trend. And the reason behind it, companies are finally realizing that employees are actually more productive when they're authentic at work. And I want to share with you a personal story about that I assumed I was authentic at work. I thought, well, it's a slam dunk. I'm out at work, and what more can there be? And I was actually, the person who, asked at my interview to have a representative from the Prism group and from the Women's Network group to help them understand that was important to me, and so I can learn about those groups. So from the very get-go, I was authentic at work, I thought. But then I've had a recent experience that in recent years, I actually developed a health condition, and I had absolutely no reason or desire to share that with anyone at work. It felt like they didn't need to know, and and I didn't want to share it. And, there's reasons for that. I was afraid to lose opportunities to do everything I wanted in my career. And some of that was real. There were expectations for me to be working 60 hours a week and to be traveling 2 weeks out of the month. But actually a lot of it I realized was my own just not accepting that. And so COVID has actually encouraged me. I was growing up the courage to share it, but COVID expedited that because I had to disclose that I cannot meet with my clients at their wastewater treatment plant sites for a while. And it's just been an amazingly freeing experience to be able to share that and release that burden. And it's amazing how much energy I realized I was putting into hiding that information. So my point is I encourage each of you to, as you're developing your identity and discovering your own identity, that you accept all sides of yourself and figure out, I think it's a question all of us will face our entire lives is what am I good at, and who knows why I'm good at this and not this, but it is what it is, and accepting that and realizing what am I meant to do with that. So that's my point on that.
And I really appreciate you sharing that story because, we think about those big 8 identities, right? Race, gender, religion, all those things, which are definitely super important. But you even bring up like the health issues and concerns, like once again, that personal stuff is going to impact the way you work, and you may need those accommodations. You may need, and you're going to have to, they can't help you if they don't know. So
exactly.
It's like, it's hard to kind of keep that boundary of what you want to keep private versus the things that maybe you do need to share, so that way everyone can support you in that.
Yes, thank you. Okay, this slide shows our 7 Jacobs employee networks. And the point here, as you're holding on to your values at work and tying into what Cameron was discussing, that as part of your research with what company you want, look into their employee networks. Do they even have any? And are they there just for show, or can you tell that there's something real behind it? There is some real support and values of that company that shine through in those places. And as Cameron was saying too, when you choose a company, and it's always a balance, you can't always find the perfect company, and there is no perfect company out there. And so I encourage you, when that happens, start working towards it. That's on you to help create that environment as well. There's certain environments that just aren't worth it, but if it's close and it's got a lot of what you want, I encourage you to help create it to be even better. Participate in that. And this is the last slide, but I do want to share a story with that. So yes, hopefully you've been inspired to consider a STEM career. And I just wanted to make one more point that I believe that there is a way that you can even promote social equality within a STEM career. If that's something that's important to you, especially right now, what's going on in our world, that you're inspired and you think, do I have to choose between these things? And I just want to give you an insight that I had recently. So in my business, it is very competitive, and it's actually quite challenging to get opportunities to break into project management, for example. And I realized one of those first opportunities came in an opportunity I got to be, I was picked to be a big role on a big project as an assistant project management role, and then that ended up to lead into managing some smaller projects for that client once we got in with them. And I was matched with the client assistant PM, who was also a female and also around my age. And I didn't even realize that at the time, but that was part of that match. I mean, I was right for the job with the skills and everything, but I realized looking backwards that, wow, that was part of that decision for them to put me in that role. And so my advice that I come out of that is to tell you all that you can make a difference by becoming the client, and look for opportunities for ways that you can be the client, because with that opportunity comes a power. You have power to create a demand for who you're working with, and that you would create a demand that who you're working with are diverse people. And so what does that mean to be the client? Because there's lots of everyone kind of has a client the way you look at it, but for example, working for a municipality, and in my field specifically, working for a water or wastewater utility. So that is what we'd like to share. We really appreciate your time, and we'd love to take some questions.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much. Yes, y'all, if you are still in the audience, please submit some questions in the comment section. They'll pop right on up. We'll ask them, we'll answer them. Yes, thank you, Heidi and Cameron, for that really awesome in-depth conversation and presentation around just like what it looks like to be entering the STEM field. And all of the different kind of trials and tribulations, things you need to be looking out for. You gave a lot of really great insight and information today, so I just really want to appreciate that. And overall, I guess my biggest question, or I guess I have a couple of questions if no one else got questions, because I always got questions. But I was saying, like, if and clearly we went over a lot of things today, but looking back on your younger self and who maybe wasn't as sure about entering to the STEM field or had any doubts, what is something that you wish someone would have said to you? What would you say to someone that was maybe that is in a similar position as you were in your younger self?
I guess I would say, reflecting on my perspective and who I am and the depths of me, I was raised as a white person, and I was raised with the understanding that I would get a good education and become anything I wanted to be. And so I would encourage everyone to take on that same confidence, I come from a family that both of my parents had master's degrees, and my dad is an engineer. So that shaped my expectation. And so I would just like to reiterate the advice not to, let that hold you back. Have that same confidence that you can do anything you want to do. If you're interested, you're passionate about it, it will happen, and you can make it happen.
Literally. I love that. Cameron?
Yeah, I mean, kind of my point is just kind of piggybacking off of Heidi's is, you really don't have to be like the best in the class to be an engineer, to be in STEM. You really just have to enjoy it and to want to go after it. You'd be surprised like how much you can achieve and how much you can do with just like hard work. Like I in college, like I was definitely not like the smartest person in my class by far. But like other people, they didn't show up to class, so like they didn't do their work. But like, hey, like I was at the library, like studying and working hard and doing my stuff, and it paid off. Like you just have to kind of like trust in yourself and work hard and know that you can do it.
And always keep pushing forward, always. Yep. Even and that's where that network comes in, finding your people, and kind of like all the things we talked about in the other videos in our series, finding your people, finding your roots, and figuring out what fuels you. And how do you cope with, those different intrusive thoughts that may come in that are like shameful or telling you that you can't do it, because that's what's going to get you. So no, I appreciate you sharing that perspective. Come on, y'all. We are taking questions, so totally put it in the comments. But like I said, if y'all ain't got them, I do. Oh, I think that's a great mindset, but true. I think that's a great mindset, but some people don't have the same opportunities in life and are held back by restrictions in their individual life. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for posting that comment around the idea of around restrictions and opportunities. And we do live in a society that definitely discriminates. We live in a society where things are set up just incorrectly. I remember I had some textbooks that were falling apart growing up, or that were scribbled all in, and you had to wait a few years for the next like big textbook to come out before you got a new one, and how long is that one gonna last, right? So there are definitely restrictions, and I would say with that, that's why it's so important to find your people, to find the people that are going to help you get to where you need to be, networking with those teachers, and letting yours. Oh, don't worry, child. I'm sorry, I'm reading all these comments for real. That's why it's very important to build, at least in my opinion, it's very important to build that network of, especially people who are older than you, who have made it, and getting that mentorship and that guidance of how do you navigate those systems in your field? How do you overcome some of those obstacles? And unfortunately, if you do have all those restrictions, you do kind of have to work harder. Not fair at all. But it's also something that can be overcome. And just kind of making sure you're always looking for those opportunities to kind of advance yourself, if that makes sense. I don't know if Heidi or Cameron would add anything.
Yeah, I would like to actually add, just so I'm maybe 15 years into my career, and so I can see who's been here before me and who's coming in behind me a little bit, and I have to say I am seeing more diversity coming through. So where it used to be a white male dominated field of engineering, it's that face of that is changing, and so I want you to know that that is real, that is happening. I can see that. Give you some encouragement.
And we're gonna need them change makers to take up those spaces. So if you know about those restrictions, and once again, engineering is a broad field, how can you get in and help kind of change that system too? Not to say that it is your responsibility, but the opportunity is there to kind of improve lives for others. Cool.
Well said.
Any other questions or comments? Because that was a really great point. That was a really great point. Great mindset is awesome, but you still got to deal with the real world, and that's hard. that's just the facts. Awesome. I would say, so I guess my last question for Heidi and Cameron is very simple. Do y'all have any final thoughts, things that, or something that maybe came up that you're thinking about now that maybe you wish you would have said, or you just remembered something, or just closing out and summarizing your main points?
Sure, I'll one little aspect of my last story that I didn't squeeze in, I'll squeeze it in now. And that's, it's interesting to learn as we develop proposals, we look at the client and the project, and we sit there and analyze, and we think about what the client's personalities are. And it's so interesting that there's that aspect of this engineering that we're doing. It's neat to be part of that world and see that. And it's, and the reason we do it is, is our client and analytical, that we should put a lot of graphs and tables in the proposal, or are they more, driven? They want to see numbers only, cost is all they care about, for example. And that also ties into our own personalities. That help, we're encouraged to figure out what our personalities are. And it's amazing for me to look around and realize, just don't put engineers in a box that we all have the same personalities. There's quite a realm of different personalities of people that are working together in this field, in the same office, in the same thing. So I just wanted to add that note too.
I think there's just one kind of like additional point, and you've already kind of said it before, Saya, was, it is really important to kind of create a network to find your people, because it at least kind of like for me personally, like I hold the view that like base level, like almost every human just like is a good person and wants to help other people and wants to do good, and when you find people that are similar to you and share, shared values, shared thoughts, shared feelings, you'd be surprised at like how willing people are to help you, like how far people will go to help you out and to try and like give you a step up, and that's really like a way to kind of like to elevate yourself or to try and like do better and to be better, and kind of once you kind of like make it, and once you kind of get somewhere, like for me personally, there's no way I would have gotten here without people helping me up and giving me a hand, and it just makes me want to help others, and it makes me want to try and reach out. And that's like why I'm here today. That's why Heidi's here today, is like we just want to help. Like we really want people to be in STEM. We want people to learn more and to have the opportunities, and it's really important to find people like that in your life that'll help you and to give you a step up. So
Ooh, I wish I could show both of y'all at the same time. Sorry, I was. But speaking of connecting with folks, I'm throwing up their LinkedIn profile links just one more time. One more time, just so you can see it one more time, have a chance to connect with them. So there is Cameron's information. I'm gonna let it kind of like tick her off, give it all its moment, and then we're gonna switch over to Heidi. But once again, thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Cameron, so much for all the information you shared today. I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm hoping that those who were able to watch this either live or even after the fact are able to get that same feeling and energy from y'all that I'm getting. And I just love the way that we're ending this off on that note. So I appreciate Heidi and Cameron for their time, energy, for putting in the work and for that presentation. I'm talking way too fast. Sorry, Kendra. But yes, I just wanted to thank y'all for that. Reminder, we are going to have our final Summer Academy speaker on Thursday. And I love that Heidi kind of touched on values, and Cameron touching on being your authentic self at work. That's real. It's not going to be about necessarily at work, but it's going to be really about harnessing your own power. And what does that look like? How do you take your own self-esteem, take your own abilities and confidence, and really exude that in a way that pushes you forward? So join us for that on Thursday. And also thank you, Kendra, again for your ASL interpretation throughout this entire time. Don't know how you do it. With us. So with that, y'all, we're gonna keep it clean, queer, and under control, and that's a wrap of this session.